welcome back to my channel. Today I'm gonna make the Elsa Into the Unknown gown for you. I did make my own pattern, and I do have it available on my website, which I will link below, as well as my embroidery files, which I will link below. This process is gonna show you the construction of it and how it went together. And then on Wednesday, I will have a video on the embellishments, kind of a little bit about the embroidery, but mostly about the rhinestones and the beadwork on her arm and down the back of her skirt. I will also link the materials I used below and how much I used, so that it's an easy point of reference. If you ever have to go back to it, you don't have to rewatch the video. This week's question of the week is we're gonna get real simple here, and I want to know, who is your favorite Disney princess? So stay tuned to the end of the video to hear who my favorite Disney princess is. Also, if you would like to support my art, you can head on over to patreon.com. I will put a little link up in the cards, as well as down below. And patrons get early access to all of my video, work in progress, the full photo shoot. Sometimes photos from that don't even make it to my Instagram. So you can head on over there if you just ultimately can't wait for 4 days, or you can head on over there if you would like to support my art and help fund my 2021 project. Otherwise, let's jump right into sewing. Let's sew some things.
The first thing I would normally do while making something is cut the fabric according to the pattern, but since I was doing so much embroidery, I decided to draw my pattern pieces onto my fabric and then do the embroidery, embellish them, and now I'm finally making it to the cutting process so you can see these are fully embellished pieces already. I used some white silky satin I had left over from my Elsa spirit dress for the lining of the bodice. I don't recommend using white fabric for this, but I'm trying not to buy more than I need, and I knew I had this in my stash, so I just used this.
All right, so all of my pattern pieces are cut out already. I did do the embroidery, so basically you can see that I accidentally got this a little too close to my draw line, but that's okay. This is gonna just be my seam. Not a big deal. All the embroidery is on, and then I also took the time to add all of the embellishments. So here's like one of the sleeves. I'm gonna have a video in a couple days up just on mostly the embellishment part, but a little bit of the embroidery. The embroidery process isn't too much different from previous videos, so I don't cover a lot of it, but I did also cut out the lining. So the next step is going to be to interface just the bodice pieces. So we've just got these two pieces that we're going to cut interface them, and then we're going to start sewing this together. I want to gather the bodice front pieces by hand together. So I guess right now I'm just going to I almost said go over to my sewing machine. I'm just going to grab some interfacing and get these pieces interfaced.
I'm using Dreamweave fusible interfacing from Floriani. I use this because it doesn't leave a papery stiffness like most of the ones at my local box store. I will cut my pieces out on this, and then using my iron set to silk, I will adhere it onto my fabric. I'm going to pin the bodice pieces together at the shoulder and side. On the right side is where my zipper will go, so I'm only going to stitch about an inch there. And then, since I like doing steps in batches, I'm also going to pin my lining for this, and also my sleeves and my sleeve lining, and then I can bring them all over to my machine and sew them accordingly. Since my wrists are rather small and making fitted sleeves that my hand can get through is difficult, I made a quick decision to have a hook and eye closure at the wrist, so I stitched my sleeve from the top to about 6 inches from the bottom. I repeated this for the lining of the sleeve, and I totally did not change the thread color for this because that's just how I roll. With right sides together and the lining on the inside, I will stitch my sleeve and lining together at the wrist opening and the wrist section of the sleeve. Since I don't have a sleeve pressing board, I used my pressing ham to press this wrist piece from both the lining and the top side. This would have been a really great task for my Elisa mini, but I didn't feel like switching irons, so I used the normal size one, which took some finagling. But we got there, eventually. Now I'm going to pin the lining at the top of the sleeve to the fashion fabric and then baste that together about a 1/2 inch from the top of the sleeve. Moving on to the bodice, I'm going to pin the lace to the fashion fabric at the neckline. I'm placing this into the seam allowance so that this stitch line isn't visible on the dress, and I also chose to overlap the lace at the shoulder bit. Once the lace was attached, I pinned the right side of the lining to the right side of the bodice and stitched that down following the line I had just stitched with the lace. This ensured that my lace attachment line would not be seen, as well as the drawn line on the back of the bodice was not seen either. I know I didn't mention it, but at some point I pressed my shoulder seams open so that when I pinned them down, they would lay flat. After this step, I actually turn the garment inside out and I press this seam, and then I will actually do an understitch. I didn't take any footage of this, but I definitely did this because of the basically the density of that embroidery in the back pulled just a little funky, so the understitch just helps it lay flat. While you watch me gather this front bit down, I will explain to you how I did the sleeves. Basically, I took my entire bodice piece to my overlock machine and I serged the top of the sleeve and then also the armhole of the sleeve. And then I just, following my pattern, I was going to gather the sleeves down and I decided to try just a little bit of a pleat and I really liked the way that looked. So I did that. So I pleated the sleeve down to fit into the armhole. And then I also actually overlocked the bottom edge of the lining and fashion fabric on the bodice. And afterwards, I regret doing this because it created a little bit of bulk in that space because of attaching the organza layers and the organza layer and the skirt layer. And honestly, I ended up having to do some hand sewing on it anyway, so it would have been smarter to just attach the skirt and then hand stitch the lining down. But I did this in a rush to try to finish it and get done fast, and that was just a bad mistake. But now I'm gathering this front bit and I'm literally, I think I did 3 total running stitches at 3/4 of an inch. There was no math to it. I just knew how much I needed it to gather down to, and so I went from there. And then once I get it gathered down, I'm actually gonna sew this little gem that I got online. I got it on Etsy a year or 2 ago. I'll still link the seller because they do sell these. But I will definitely link that below. But I just kind of stitched it down and that helped me secure this entire piece. Now to add the line of rhinestones to the front neckline, I used the pink rhinestones from Rhinestone Genie as well as this line template. I wish I had this when I was working on Elsa's capelet, but I didn't, so here I am using it now. These are 3mm hot fix rhinestones, so we will be adhering them with my iron. To do this, I just pour out some stones onto my little tray and then with my magnet placed down, and then I'm going to use actually a spare piece of the transfer tape that I had left over from Sally, I believe. It was just a strip I had. I kept all of my scraps. So I'm going to use that transfer tape to pick up my stones, and then I'm going to place it at the neckline. Now, I am going to get a little bit away from the center point because I'm going to go back in with a hot fix tool to place 1 or 2 stones. I think 1 at the center, and then I do a couple more at the shoulder just to complete it because I didn't feel like I needed to repeat this process to fill in those couple stones. I also wanted to be precise, and I don't know how precise I would have been if I had just filled up a line of them. Using my Elsa Mini, I will press and hold until I do this for 15 to 20 seconds per section. And then I do actually do what I call the touching test, where I literally just like touch the stone to make sure it's stuck on there. It's not technical or anything like that. I will repeat on the other side, and as you can see in that center there, I do leave a gap. Like I said, I want to be able to hand place those couple, and you can also see there's a gap between the end of the stones and the shoulder seam. And again, instead of doing this like a third or fourth time, I hand place those stones with a hot fix tool because I think that it was a little bit more precise and I had a little bit more control over it. But that's also why I like these stones, right? Is because I can use them with my hot fix tool or I can use them with my iron. For the skirt portion of the dress, I started by cutting out the satin and organza. Then I serged the edges. I waited until after my embroidery was done to serge the edges because I actually didn't figure out where I wanted the hem and everything until after it was done. And then also to make sure that that top piece was accurate as well. For the organza layers, I actually serged them together in the panels so that I can basically skip a step. I didn't have to overlock each side and then go ahead and sew it up. So I did it this way, but for the actual panels of the skirt, I did serge the edges and then sew them up. So yeah. I did sew all of the pieces together for the organza, and I left the right side where the zipper is gonna go open at I serged those edges and then I sewed them together, and I left it open I think at the 22-inch mark or wherever the mark was for the zipper end, and then I went ahead and I did a rolled hem stitch at the edge of this organza piece. I also held the piece up to the bodice and used chalk to draw where the embroidery piece goes, and then I cut that out and I actually burned that edge. I didn't video it because it was pretty smoky and I was also afraid it wasn't gonna work. So I was like, if this doesn't work, no one will know. But it did actually work. And just if you are gonna burn the edge like that, do a test first, figure out how close you need your flame to get a good edge without it actually bunching, because it will kind of create a noticeable bunching, but mine didn't because I did some tests. On the fashion fabric, I stitched all of my seams together like I explained previously, and then I also took this to my my table and I pressed these open so that they would lay flat. I also did press my organza seams to a side. I pressed them away from the center front, but it didn't end up really mattering. So now I head on over to my dress form and I pinned this to the bodice. I haven't actually sewn it on yet because I wanted less dress in my sewing machine when I chose to do this, or when I sewed this down. And I started the center front, and I know that my embroidery looked a little, maybe a millimeter off on the bottom, maybe 2 millimeters off. It's just enough to notice, but not enough to be crazy. So I started at the centerpiece with the embroidery and I pinned my hem just all the way around. I was going for about a 3/4 of an inch hem, and I also wanted to make sure that it didn't touch the ground. I wanted it to basically hover slightly in the front, and then obviously in the back it has this cute little swoopy drapey bit, but also my seam lines didn't match up all the way. That could be just from cutting it on a fold, which happens a lot because one side lined up a little bit better than the other, but anyway, so I just kind of go around this whole skirt and I will work on the hem, and then I chose to hand sew the front panel down. So I chose to hand sew this front panel down because I didn't want to have a stitch line through my embroidery. And then I realized I also don't want to have a stitch line that just leads up to my embroidery and then like nothing. This part is pretty irrelevant because once you put the organza over it, it's not really easy to see the hemline anyway, but I did it. I hand sewed this front panel down and then I machine sewed the back panel down, and I think it looks really good. If there was no organza layer, or for whatever reason I had to lift up my organza layer, I would be confident showing this piece off, so I did it this way. Now with both hems complete, I'm able to sew the organza layer on to the skirt layer. And then I will, from here, actually sew this onto the bodice. And I do actually leave the gap for the zipper as well. So you'll see that there is a gap, and we will apply our invisible zipper. So I do have an entire video on sewing down an invisible zipper, but I'm going to explain it for the purpose of putting in a side zipper. So what I did here was I did skip the interfacing part on this because my fabric is a pretty heavy. I have the right side of the zipper attached to the right side of my fabric on the left half of the seam. You can see my serged bit here, and I also am using a regular zipper foot because I don't have an invisible zipper foot, and I didn't think I needed it, and I didn't need it. So right side to right side on the left half of the zipper, and I did skip the top where the zipper is open and closed because I will go back and open the zipper up and sew it there. But as you can see here, my zipper is still closed. Now, pardon my entirely awkward angle, but as you see, zipper is sewn, and then I keep the zipper up and I will line up the hem, actually not the hem, the bodice seam. I will make sure that those two line up, and I will pin the zipper, right side of the zipper, to the right side of my fashion fabric at that piece there, and then I will bring it, I'll go all the way up. The zipper is still closed. I will bring it all the way up, and then I will pin it all the way, like I will actually start to unzip it and pin it all the way down. This is just so that I can get my hands in there and get pins in there and get it into my sewing machine. But this is on the, like, basically it's on the right side of the zipper, on the right hand side of the zipper. Once that is pinned, I will sew it down, but with the zipper open. Now, once again, the reason I pinned it with it closed was so that I could get the zipper to line up. I will then, at this point, once this is done, zip it up, turn my entire dress inside out, and zip the bottom portion and also these top little guys down so that it'll stay tucked inside my sleeve area. That part was really stressful because I was so afraid I was going to get the sleeve caught in it, but I didn't end up doing that. And also, it was kind of like a weird choice to choose a pink zipper because I forgot that I have black organza. So like for the majority of the zipper, it's not invisible because my black organza is like, hey, there's a zipper here. But I tried. It was what it was. I didn't think that whole thing through. I still don't mind it. The zipper is in, and now we have a finished Elsa gown.
Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I actually really love how this turned out, even though I'm not a huge fan of how high up the bodice ends. It's like just such an awkward place for me. It reminds me of Regency fashion, and I don't like that. So it's definitely interesting for me, but overall, I really do love how this dress is turning out, and just this dress in general. And I'd like to thank you so much for watching this video. There's other things I needed to tell you. Oh, my favorite Disney princess. My favorite Disney princess is, and I feel like always will be, but it was tested My favorite tested, like seriously though, my favorite Disney princess is Ariel. However, when Moana came out, like there's days where I'm like, no, Moana's my favorite. But when Moana came out, like she just skyrocketed to the top. I don't really know why, but I'm super interested in this story or idea of like a woman out on an adventure in a place she's never been. And so like that's why I love Moana so much. That's also why I love Ariel, even though hers was like for love, but I also have loved mermaids. Like ever since I was really little, I've loved Ariel and mermaids, and I used to wrap like a little piece of fabric around my legs and go swimming and pretend I was a mermaid, like whatever. But I love mermaids, and so Ariel is my favorite Disney princess. Please tell me who your favorite Disney princess is down in the comments below. Oh. Okay. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like Disney, if you like sewing, if you like historical costuming, if you like pretty things, please subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up, comment below, and I will see you guys next week, and happy sewing! Actually, I'll see you Wednesday and next week. Twice.